Hi, everyone.
Good morning.
Yeah.
So we're coming at you a day early this week from Helena. It is transmittal week here at the Capitol, meaning that every bill that's a general bill that doesn't have any money or appropriation attached to it has to have passed its first house today, or excuse me, not today. By Saturday is the final day. It has to have passed either the Senate if it's a Senate bill or the House if it's a House bill by Saturday and be on its way to the other house. Anything that doesn't make it across that finish line by Saturday is dead. There are a couple of transmittal deadlines throughout the session. This is probably by far the biggest one. Anything that's a revenue bill or an appropriation bill gets a later transmittal deadline. I actually don't know that date off the top of my head. I think it's April 1st. So those bills have more time to work through the process if they have money associated with them. So it has been a busy week here in Helena, and things are actually really tapering off today though. Monday and Tuesday were very busy days here for us. The House and the Senate both had committee hearings until yesterday morning. The House had a few more committee hearings that they finished up Wednesday morning. The House is still on the floor. They will be doing floor session today and tomorrow, but the Senate has already left town. Yeah. They have done their work and they are gone for a transmittal break, and the House will be leaving either Friday night or first thing Saturday morning. So things are really starting to slow down, but we do have quite a few updates for you this week.
Yeah, and if you have any questions, feel free to comment. Reach out if you are tuning in. Let us know where you're at, where you're watching. Hope you're all staying warm. I'll give an update on a bill that we talked to you about last week. House Bill 520 increases the Livestock Loss program's budget from $200,000 to $300,000. So it adds another $100,000 from the general fund. That bill passed out of House Agriculture, and since there's money involved in this bill, it did go into the House Appropriations Committee. And we were really excited to see, despite the fact that we're kind of operating on a slim budget this session, that that did pass out of House Appropes. So we're very excited to see that moving along in the legislative process, and it had a good vote too, 16-6, I think. So that's moving along. That's Representative Ray Shaw's bill. Keep going. Okay. We'll also update you on House Bill 286. This was that state lands bill that we talked about 2 weekends ago. It's Representative Redfield's bill out of Livingston. And this bill clarifies that the state of Montana can only claim ownership of a water right on trust lands if that water right is derived on their private or on their state land, developed on their land, and put to beneficial use on their land. So just to update you guys on where this started, DNRC has started claiming partial ownership of water rights located on private land that were then diverted onto state land. So if you have private land that's right next to your state lease that you're using for grazing, and you divert some of your water onto your state lease because best management practice, you want to utilize that water on that land, some of these water rights are being partially claimed by the state. So we want to make that clarification that the state cannot claim part of your water right that is located on private land, put to beneficial use on your private land. So that got out of the House Natural Resources Committee with a bipartisan vote and was heard on the House floor on Wednesday, second reading. Passed with bipartisan support, and then third reading
was a great
yesterday.
vote. It was 83-4, so that's a
16.
Yeah, really strong vote for that bill.
So we were very excited to see that pass out of the House as of yesterday. So that will be in the Senate when we come back from transmittal. So stay tuned on that. We're really, really hoping to get this past the finish line with a lot of bipartisan support.
So a couple other bills that we worked on earlier in this week. On Tuesday afternoon, we were in the House Agriculture Committee, which had 6 bills in a hearing on Tuesday afternoon. It was a bit of a marathon. We were there for quite a while. We testified on several of the bills, and a couple I'll update you on. One is House Bill 621, which was carried by Representative Teresa Manzella. And this bill proposed to make changes to Montana's meat inspection laws. We opposed this bill because what those changes proposed to do would have put us in violation with FSIS, which is federal inspection laws or federal meat inspection laws through the USDA, as well as the Federal Meat Inspection Act itself. This was in result to a situation in which there was a processing facility that failed an inspection, and the meat was condemned by the Department of Livestock. It could not be returned to the people who brought it, the people who owned it. However, those people contacted Teresa Vanzella, their representative, and were concerned about their investment that had just been lost. And so Representative Manzella brought this bill to propose that there be some sort of an appeal process for meat processors who don't meet an inspection. Secondarily, that there would be provided some ability for individuals to sign a waiver to collect their meat product that had been adulterated or contaminated in some way. And while we can certainly sympathize with the folks who spent money to have an animal processed and then found out that they were not going to be able to actually take that animal home and put it in their freezer, this was essentially a non-starter. There are huge ramifications for this bill. USDA has already sent communication to the Department of Livestock stating that if this bill were to pass, the state of Montana would no longer be able to have a state-run meat inspection program, and every processor in the state would have to comply with federal meat inspection regulations. And secondly, it's a massive public health issue. We see this all the time across our industry whenever we have a foodborne illness outbreak. And while those things may start with the processor, they may start with the restaurant, we all have seen, and unfortunately some have felt, how these issues trickle back down to the farmer who grew the produce or the livestock producer who raises the sheep, hog, or beef. So it's a massive issue, and unfortunately, while we sympathize with the situation, this situation is not one in which the state should be required to fix policy. So Farm Bureau really supports maintaining a strong state meat inspection program. So we opposed this bill. There were several other opponents to the bill. There were no proponents. And in fact, the House Agriculture Committee took executive action that night and tabled the bill. So this bill is effectively dead, and hopefully we won't have to have this conversation again in the session. Another bill I'll update you on was another conversation we thought we weren't going to have to keep having in this session, but House Bill 594 is the resurrected version of Senate Bill 206, which you heard us talk about a few weeks ago. Senate Bill 206 was carried by Senator Olszewski and was the country of origin placarding bill we heard in Senate Agriculture. That bill was tabled in committee, and that committee went to work on creating a committee bill that would be a resolution to Congress to encourage Congress and our members in Congress to again pursue a discussion about implementing rule through USDA for country of origin labeling regarding beef and pork products. We thought that was the appropriate avenue to go. So we were working on that resolution. Meanwhile, House Bill 594 was introduced, carried by Representative Brad Hamlet, which was virtually the same exact bill as Senate Bill 206. House Bill 94 had very small changes. In fact, they were probably even more harmful changes in that they reverted to original bill language that contained a label, the requirement for a label that would have labeled product origin unknown. So for those of you that aren't familiar with what we're talking about, these placarding acts are an attempt to provide country of origin labeling, but they're not effective and it's not pursued through the correct channels. So both House Bill 594 and Senate Bill 206 proposed to put regulatory burden on retail establishments in the state of Montana and require that they be responsible and accountable for providing this placarding, whether that be a sign next to the meat counter or an actual label that goes on the product. They are the ones now responsible for determining the origin of that product and labeling it accordingly. We had several problems with that. First of all, they threaten jail time and implementation of fines for retailers who can't comply. Secondly, we're putting the requirement and the regulation on the very end of the processing chain. And retailers across our state, who are often small family-run businesses, are going to have a very difficult time accurately determining the precise origin of a lot of their product if we don't already have a mechanism at the top of the processing chain or from the federal level to help them determine that. So we really oppose that bill. We think that it put a lot of undue burden on business owners in Montana who frankly have no control over a lot of what the information is that they are given regarding their product. Secondarily, we think that if this is something you are interested in pursuing, this is an easy free market fix. If there's a retailer out there interested in sourcing a Montana beef or pork product, or a beef or pork producer who's interested in working with a local retailer to be able to provide, hey, here's your Montana beef or pork product, by all means do that. But issuing state policy, making it a mandate, was not going to be the right avenue. So House Bill 594 was also tabled in House Agriculture. Right before House Agriculture, I was in Senate Agriculture, where we heard SJ, Senate Joint Resolution 16, which was the cool resolution to Congress asking them to pursue country of origin labeling conversations again at the federal level for beef and pork products. That was our answer to the placarding bill. We believe in a country of origin labeling rule for the USA that is compliant with WTO requirements and also doesn't have negative impacts for livestock producers or small business owners throughout the United States. So we really strongly believe that pursuing this from a federal level is going to be the most economic and effective way to establish country of origin labeling laws for these bills. So those two bills, Senate Joint Resolution 16 passed out of that committee unanimously and passed the Senate floor yesterday and is on its way to the House. So that one's moving along well. And like I said, House Bill 594 was tabled in the House Agriculture Committee Tuesday night.
One other bill we'll update you on is Senate Bill 299. It's a sage grouse bill introduced by Senator Mike Lang out of the Malta area. He's also on the Montana Sage Grouse Oversight Team, so he's got a lot of experience in the sage grouse arena. So over the last couple of years, we have been working with the Sage Grouse Habitat Conservation Program, trying to come up with a program that establishes incentives for landowners to participate, and balances conservation and development together. So a little background on that program. It seeks to conserve sage grouse through compensatory mitigation. So landowners can do projects that conserve or enhance sage grouse habitat. They create credits through those projects. Developers participate in the program as disturbing sage grouse habitat, so they have to purchase those credits to offset their development. This program has taken a long time to get off the ground, but in the interim, we finally have policy that outlines how this process will work. A habitat quantification tool is what they describe as the model that essentially determines the specific functional acres of habitat that you're either disrupting or conserving. And we've been really, really involved in this process. And one issue that we've been running into is that these projects are costing a lot of money. The compensatory mitigation requirement for some of these developers are asinine and frankly infeasible. And one example, if anyone has been following this issue, is a cell phone tower that was going to go up in what I have heard described as essentially a junkyard, no longer sage grouse habitat. And their mitigation requirement was going to be approximately $1.8 million for a project in an area that really, really needs a cell phone tower. We all know that our rural areas need this development. So Senate Bill 299 sought to clarify that this program really does need to balance conservation and development together. And we support that with the amendments because at the end of the day, our rural communities right now are a little bit endangered as well. And this program cannot inhibit development in our rural areas. So we were happy to see that come out of the Senate Natural Resources Committee, and it passed on the Senate floor as well yesterday. So stay tuned for that. We're hoping to see that come through the House as well.
So with it being Transmittal Week, things are moving pretty quickly. So there's a lot of bills that we've talked to you about before, but there's a few things that we can give you updates on, stuff that you've heard us talk about before. A couple of those are some of the wildlife bills we've talked about, which were, there were two bills we talked about being carried by Representative Wiley Galt that dealt with the shoulder season hunts for elk in several hunting districts across the state of Montana that are over their population objective. And both of these bills were amended in committee, but both those bills, it was House Joint Resolution 18 and House Bill 497. Both of those bills have passed the House and are on their way to the Senate. So again, those are some pretty positive bills for private landowners and elk management issues in the state of Montana that we are supporting and following through the process. Of course, if you have any questions while we're going through this about other bills we don't talk about or something that maybe we talked about earlier, please let us know, because the next couple of days, things happen pretty quickly. For those of you that do receive the legislative highlights email, that will still be coming out tomorrow afternoon when we get as close to the transmittal deadline as we can so that we have the most up-to-date information.
Another one that is moving along in the process is Representative Redfield's Real Meat Act, House Bill 327. And this bill clarifies that you cannot use any nomenclature associated with meat in artificial meat products. So your petri dishes, your imitation meat. This clarifies that if you're going to have fake meat, it can't be called meat. So we supported this. We're excited to see this moving along in the process because here in Montana, we truly grow the best meat in the world, and we don't want these other companies, taking that credit for that. So
no fake meat.
No fake meat.
Eat beef.
Real beef.
Yeah. Something else that is kind of exciting and of fun note is that one of the bills, we've had our first bill that we supported cross the governor's desk and get a signature as of February 26th. And that was a bill dealing with block management carried by Representative Denley Logie. So it's always a good feeling when we start to see pieces of legislation actually make their way to the governor's office and then actually receive the signature. It's kind of the kicker. So that always makes us feel good. And we were sorting through the list today, and a lot of the bills that we've talked to you guys about since the beginning of the session have already been transmitted to the second house. We really have no bills that are hanging out there till the bitter end that are going to take a big lift to get across the finish line, which is a really good feeling. It sometimes can come down to the wire and be a little tense to try to get something across the floor to the next house by that deadline. And Montana Farm Bureau is not in that position this year. Additionally, there's nothing that we're opposing that has made it to the other house yet either, which is also really, really positive. Not to say that there aren't going to be bills that in their second house aren't amended in an unfriendly way. There is still the potential for some of these things to change. So I'm sure we'll still have those kinds of updates for you. But overall, the first half of the session has been extremely positive, and we've made really great progress. And we're just kind of waiting for the clock to run out on the final floor session here today and tomorrow, and then we'll be looking for a couple days off. Looking forward to a couple days off.
One other bill that did receive the governor's signature pretty early on was House Bill 63, which revised the financial responsibility requirement sunset date for commercial applicators. Very simple bill, but we're excited to see something that we gave a thumbs up to in committee receive the governor's signature. So,
yeah. So I think that that's about it. Making sure we're not missing any questions here. Thank you guys for tuning in with us a day early this week. We're going to be heading out to go home for a couple of days before coming back late next week. The Senate will come back next Friday. They actually will have to gavel in, which is essentially take roll call on Thursday night, but they will not have any committee hearings. They won't have a board of work to do during the floor session. And there's I'm not sure if there are committee hearings next Friday or not. The House will not be back till Monday the 11th. So everybody is eager to get out of town for a few days off. Hopefully our roads are friendly to us today.
Yeah,
we'll find out. I know that's not the case across most of the state. So we really appreciate you guys tuning in. Thank you so much for your comments and your questions. As always, please feel free to contact us if you have another question or to send an email our way. We will not be doing a live update next week. So we will see you back here in 2 weeks on what I think is March 15th is the first Friday. So I can't believe it's March already, but we will see you guys then. So everybody stay warm.
Thanks,
have a good day. Bye.